friends and neighbors, this is Ricky, and we are still in month 1 of our family emergency preparedness calendar, and we have a few more topics to discuss. In this video, we're going to talk about water just a little bit, and we're also going to talk about evacuations and some things that come up when you start talking about evacuation routes and locations and that type of a thing. But first, we'll talk just a minute about water. So in my house, we've got 4 people that are here and 2 family members, one of our kids and that's married. They come and stay with us for a few nights out of the week and visit with us and have dinner and all that kind of stuff. And we want to make sure that in our home, we're prepared for 6 people, in addition to our neighbors next to us and across the street. So we're really kind of thinking a lot larger than our just immediate family as far as emergency preparedness goes. So in our home, we decided that we would not only keep gallons of water on hand, but that we would buy a water purification filtration system that can purify river water or pond water or dirty water, and it will clean it to down to a viral level, like 99.99% of viruses, bacteria, pathogens, heavy metals, chemicals, all that kind of stuff. This filter will clean it. So it's called a Berkey, and it processes 3.5 gallons of water at a time, which is sufficient for our family, but I've never actually tested it. So I put it together according to instructions. I have run a lot of our good water through it. We have a well here, so there's nothing wrong with the water. It just has a really strong iron taste to it. And I don't personally care for that. So running it through this filter has made a huge difference. It tastes great, but that isn't sufficient. Like, taste is not sufficient for emergency preparedness. I need to know if what comes out the other end of this filter is actually clean water. So the way to do that with a Berkey is to do a dye test. So they provide you with a couple of these little vials. All it is red dye, and it says to take 1 gallon of water and put 1 teaspoon of red dye in it and run it through your filter and then see what comes out the bottom. If the water that comes out the bottom even has a hint of red in it, then these filters are not put in correctly. So to be super safe though, what you would want to do is run your water through your filter and then have it tested at a local water lab to make sure that it's completely clean. But for the purposes of this video and just as an act of testing out my equipment, I'm gonna do the dye test that they recommend and see if I notice anything visually. Again, I would probably suggest having your water tested at a water lab, and ultimately I need to do that very thing. So anyway, so I'm gonna do this water test and then we will move on to talking about evacuations and evacuation planning and routes and some things to consider that maybe are just not at the forefront of your mind when you are thinking about evacuations. It's actually really easy to miss some of the simple things, and yet it's critical. So I definitely want to address all of those things. Because I don't have a container large enough to put an entire gallon without like wasting one of my stored water things, I'm gonna just mix it in the tank here, which is going to be fine because it's going to take a minute to get through the filters anyway. So actually I'll put the clear one in first. And I've moved it onto these large jars with each of the filters going into one jar, and that's just so that I don't put the dye into my actual tank, like the holding tank. Okay, so we'll just give that a minute to process and we'll see what we get in the end. And I really hope it's clean because what a bummer. But so I want to talk about evacuations. I made myself a little list of things to be sure to address with our evacuation considerations so that we don't miss it. So really what you want to ask yourself when planning your evacuations is how, what, when, where, why, and who. So maybe I didn't say them in the right order, but it doesn't matter as long as you cover all those things. So how? When you're gonna evacuate, how are you evacuating? It seems really intuitive and of course you'll just do what's needed in the moment, but it's so much better if you have a plan that addresses the how of this. So depending on the event, if it's something that happens suddenly like an earthquake, your how could be changed drastically. If all of a sudden you don't have access to your driveway, you're not evacuating in a vehicle. But if it's something like a fire and it's further out and you're being alerted and you're getting your warnings and you're understanding your situational awareness, that gives you a lot more time to plan. So are you going to move vehicles that don't have a driver that you have at your home and then evacuate yourselves? You really could go into it with hours of forewarning versus only minutes, although it can happen instantly and then you don't have any warning. So having this type of plan in place that addresses all of these questions is going to be your best approach. So everybody in your household knows what to do, when to do, and how to do it. So when you're choosing locations, when we live in a community like ours where we have multiple waterways and you cross a waterway in your regular routine, you need to have an evacuation location on either side of any waterway you cross daily. For example, if you live in the 97526 zip code and you cross over to the 97527 zip code for work every day or vice versa, you need to have a location on either side of that waterway. You might not be able to get back across if we're talking about something like an earthquake. Obviously, the majority of our other events, this is not going to be an issue, but if we did have an earthquake that caused a roadway to be unusable, you would need a place to go. And the other thing you need to think about when it comes to your evacuation locations is that location a meeting place that you are going to gather family members or whoever's part of your plan together to relocate to your actual evacuation location, or is this the place that you're actually going to stay? If it's a place you're going to stay, you want to have some supplies there. So if you've got family members or friends that you can work with back and forth so that they can come to you in the event of an emergency happening in their area and you can go to them if there's an emergency happening in your area, then that's great. You can keep a bin full of stuff in their house so that you are not using their supplies to take care of yourself and your family. So what is the purpose in your evacuation location? Is it a meeting point or is it the destination? So, and that's actually going to change depending on the type of event that we have. If there's a wildfire and your evacuation location is now threatened, you clearly can't stay there. So having a backup to your backup is a really good idea. It seems like nutty, but if everybody in your house knows what to do, then they know where to go first and where to go second and where to go third if that becomes necessary. If you can't communicate during the event, it's very comforting to know that everyone in your home or in your plan is going to follow the set plan because they knew what to do ahead of time. Does the location change in light of the event? Let me give you an example of this. Our current evacuation plan for certain events, not every event, is to leave our property and head down toward the creek about a mile from here, depending on what it is. This isn't going to be the case if we have a wildfire. We need to leave the area entirely, but for the purpose of this example, this works well. If we go down to that creek area, if that's our only evacuation location, and it happens to be that we have a winter storm upon us and it's quite large and the waterways are reaching their breaching point, then our evacuation location very likely could be underwater. It's a safe location for us in certain circumstances. In others, it's not really the best place to go. So we have to have a backup to our backup, but at least it's close enough for us to get to on foot if we needed to, or we can relocate vehicles down there if we needed to. It's a large field that allows us to be near water if need be. When do you evacuate? So this is kind of a bigger issue than people think it is. The reason why it's a big issue is because not everybody's going to agree on the when answer. Some people in the community have decided that they're going to evacuate when they receive an alert. That is a problem. Do not depend on getting an alert no matter what. Even if everything's working perfectly and alerts are sent, it's as simple as your phone has died, or it's in the other room and you don't hear it, or you happen to go outside to feed the dogs and you don't hear your alert. Don't wait for that type of alerting to come through. And if something happened in your personal citizen alert account, if that's the system we were using, and you didn't receive that alert because of some problem in an account that you thought was set up fine, that would prohibit you getting that information. The best answer to this question, when, is as soon as you feel uncomfortable. If you become aware of again, for example, a wildfire that is near enough to your home to make you feel unsettled about being there, that's your time to leave. If you have people with special needs, if you have children, if you have animals, if you have anything that requires your assistance, evacuating early is your best bet. While you could get in your car and drive down the road and reach your destination in a matter of 5 minutes on a regular day, if you try to do that same route while all of your neighbors are being evacuated, it's going to be a really slow process. It's going to take a lot longer to get to your destination than it would on your regular day. So when do you evacuate? An important question for you to answer for yourself and your family. Just don't wait and leave when you feel uncomfortable. That's the best advice. Where? So where you're going to evacuate is another question we kind of addressed in the how, but the where, there's another, I guess, consideration. You have to make an evacuation plan that includes routes that you might take, alternate routes. And what you won't have is the county or a fire department write that out for you, because we don't know where events will take place. If we send you out a road that happens to have a fallen tree on it, well then that road is no longer a good route for you. And if the fire or winter storm or whatever it might be is in that location, then again, we've sent you to a road that's not going to be good for you. What we encourage you to do is to look at the mapping that we have in our area, look at the routes that are nearest you, give yourself multiple routes, your backups to your backups. I love the saying in emergency preparedness that 2 is 1 and 1 is none. So 2 minimum. It would be better to have 3 or more so that you have multiple choices when it comes to where to evacuate and how to evacuate. Road surfaces and your vehicle's ability are also factors. In fact, your own ability is a factor. If you feel comfortable driving on rough terrain, then you might consider using some of those back roads that are not necessarily county maintained, but only if you know the routes and you've done it before, and you go out adventuring on a nice day where the risk is minimal and you've told somebody, this is where I'm going, this is how long I plan to be there, and if I don't contact you in such and such amount of time, then come looking for me. Do that. Go drive around and see what your options are, but don't plan on taking your 2-wheel vehicle out on some semi-treacherous road, especially in adverse conditions. So if we've got really cold temperatures or really high winds where trees are an issue, or if we have snow or something that's going to cause the road surface to be slippery, you really have to consider what you're taking and where you're planning on taking it. So consider all of that stuff when you're making your evacuation plan. What is the next question? What are you evacuating? Well, that is going to be dependent upon how much warning you have. Again, if you're situationally aware and you feel uncomfortable and it's time to leave, you're going to give yourself a lot more time to get out of the area than if you wait for that leave now level 3 evacuation that's giving you basically 5 minutes to gather your belongings and leave your home. If you have a 5-minute plan, it is going to be the essentials, which is going to be you, your family, your pets, your neighbors. However, if you have an hour or 3 hours or 5 hours, and you can really be thoughtful about it, you're going to be able to address a lot more of your needs as far as what you take with you in that type of approach. Why are you evacuating? Well, that has to do with local hazards. So if you don't know this already, each county or region at the very least has a Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan. And that plan identifies what the top hazards are for any particular region. You can find our plans on the emergency management web pages, and you can look up those hazards specifically. Most people are fairly aware though, when you look around you, these are the kinds of things that we face. If you live in Oregon, you know we have fires. You know we have winter storms, you know we have drought. Those are high up. Drought, even mudslides, landslides, that type of thing, those are pretty high on our list. Earthquake is a middle tier issue, and the reason is, while it's going to be a gigantic event for us, they're so infrequent that it's not up there with wildfire and drought and some of the other things that you'll find. It's important that you know your local hazards: floods, fires, drought, earthquake, mudslides, those types of things, wind events, even severe weather, hot and cold. These are all in our counties. However, There are certain things that you personally need to prepare for that perhaps somebody living in another side of the community doesn't have to prepare for. So personally, we do not necessarily need to prepare for flood because we live on the side of a mountain. However, we do have to be considering landslides because we live on the side of a mountain. So my considerations are going to be less geared toward things like floods, although it's important to note that even if your home is not impacted by one of these events, your evacuation routes may be. So if there is flooding, I would still need to consider evacuating before my resources are cut off or before my ability to evacuate my property is removed. So consider that. What is impacting you personally in your home, and what are the things that are going to impact your evacuation routes? And we've already touched on this, but who are you evacuating? Again, you're evacuating people, you're evacuating pets. So yourself, your family, your neighbors around you, if they need that assistance, and your pets, those are the things that you would pack up and go. You may also be considering evacuating large animals, and that would have to happen fairly early. So we recommend that people evacuate at a level 2, or again, when you start to feel like this could be an issue, I'm gonna get my animals out of here so that they're safe. But otherwise, the fire department does ask that we do not open up gates and let large animals out, because animals go onto roadways and block emergency vehicles from coming in, and they also block evacuation routes. So we don't encourage people, we ask you not to open up doors or pens and let animals roam free. One other consideration that has to do with emergency vehicles accessing your property and assisting is your access to your home and your driveway. So if you have not limbed your trees up at least 14 feet and you don't have the width that can accommodate a fire truck, then your home is not defensible. So make sure that they have easy and clear access into your home if you're dealing with something like a wildfire. There is a resource that we are working on. It is not yet available, but it is in the works. It's a map that covers road surfaces in our county. So that is going to be a really useful document for those people living in Josephine County, further out in the Illinois Valley, because it will cover all of your roads that people would need to use. There's limited access in and out of the Illinois Valley, so these back roads are largely used by people, but we're working on a road surfaces map so that you can use that resource to create your plan and know what you're dealing with without actually driving all of these routes yourself. You'll be able to see if it is a county maintained road, if it's gravel, if it's really only fit for a 4-wheel drive, and that type of a thing. So that'll be a resource that's available on our GIS page when we do have it completed. So keep an eye out for that at Josephine County's website under the Geographic Information System. Lastly, all plans require skills. And even if it's just evacuating, you need to have the skills necessary to evacuate the things that you want to take with you. All evacuations require a plan, and they require some skills. It doesn't really seem like it would be something you have to develop because you're just gonna leave. However, think about if you had to take someone with special needs with you and they had equipment that needed to be cared for in a certain way. You're going to have the skills in place before you actually need to try to save someone in an evacuation situation. Or large animals. If you are planning on trailering your animals and removing them, if you have not done that before, the time to learn is not when you're trying to save your life and your property. So practice that stuff ahead of time, see what the challenges are, understand your animal's behavior and what you can expect from them during that situation. Animals are quite keen and understand when things are not right, and they know when something is going on and their behavior changes. They get erratic. Dogs, even your dog that you're used to dealing with every single day, when they start to see panic and feel that, and you open a door, it's not an uncommon thing for an animal to run out the door and just be gone. Or your cats, if you have cats, to go and hide. So think about what animals you have, what skills do you need to develop to help them, what skills do you need to have to help your neighbors and your family, and get practicing. Drills will make such a huge difference. So practice, practice, practice. Our water is still filtering. It's looking good, but I'm gonna wait until it's all there, and then I'll put it all in one container, or maybe half a gallon of it into a container, and then I'll compare it to clean water that we already have filtered, and we'll see if it looks good. So I'll be back. Okay, we are back to look at what's happened with our filtered water going through the Berkey, and it's a painfully slow process, so give yourself some time if you're gonna test a water filtration system like this, I would guess that a lot of them, take time because they're filtering water and it's a slow kind of drip system. From what I can see in the water that's come out the bottom, it is completely clear. I don't even feel like I need to compare it to water like out of the sink or anything like that. It looks great. What I will do is take a sample of this to the water lab. Now that I can visually see nothing, I want to make sure that there is not anything there that I cannot see. So to finish this off, I would take a sample to the water lab and have them give me the results for this test. So that is all for this video. I know it was long. Thanks for sticking with me. Evacuations are really important, and it's good to have a plan and to discuss things and think through them thoroughly. The last video will be on the grab and go binder, and that will kind of include a lot of the stuff that we've talked about as far as your evacuation plans and routes and the things that you would take with you and the hows and the whys, and 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour plus, all of the different plans and what that entails, and everything else that goes in the grab and go binder. So I look forward to that video with you guys. Thank you very much for sticking with me. Keep prepping.